After the war between the states, the North came down and cut down most of the trees in the South and sold them. There had been some floods in the past, but now the really bad floods began. The rain raced down eroded hills and devastated everybody downriver. They had no choice but to dam the river. Valley of Vision, the TVA Years by Martha E. Munzer, by the Conservation Foundation, New York, Alfred A. Knopf, 1969, page 13 and 14. The Tennessee River went through 7 states, an area larger than Great Britain, and the TVA did much more than supply electricity, but brought in agricultural experts to tell farmers how to save land damaged by flood erosion. The TVA helped fertilizer factories get going, and they planted trees, and people from governments all over the world came to see the miracle of the TVA. Electricity put an end to the old ways of life, and things were going well until the demand for electricity grew bigger than the supply, and the Tennessee River Basin was just not big enough to make all the electricity people wanted, so they started strip mining coal, and the TVA got into the coal-fired steam business. In the 30s, coal from Silesia made Poland into Germany's eastern trading partner, and when Britain signed a pact with Poland that was a trade deal about coal, Poland shifted from trading with Germany to doing deals with Britain. The British had also been trying to drum up business in France, and Hitler's moving into that market was not favorable to Britain. And the Nazis had been able to get affordable radios into German homes where the message of Hitler's success could reach every hard-working German. All Hitler's speeches were broadcast directly into people's living rooms, while FDR was doing the same thing in America, and there'd been over 5,000 radios in German homes in 1920, and there would be 2.5 million 4 years later. And the radio would tell them that the English were crooks and that the French were sneaks, and a German cleaning lady at the White House told FDR how much she loved hearing Hitler over her radio. Heinrich Hertz had discovered radio waves in 1887, and on the 2nd of November in 1920, the American presidential election of Harding was broadcast by radio, and by 1921 there were 8 broadcast stations, and there were 600 the following year, and radio broadcasting began in Britain by 1922. When Hitler spoke on the radio for the first time, it had been very effective, and George Bailey said that the German language sounded like it got things done. Inventors came up with feedback amplifiers in 1928, and by 1934, the Nazis mounted them on trucks to drive around broadcasting their message over loudspeakers. And by 1935, the radio airwaves were full. The BBC had begun broadcasting television from Alexandria Palace in 1929, and by 1936, the BBC was broadcasting television regularly. And in America, the CBS radio station was all ready to have Hitler speak on the 11th of December in 1931, but it was cancelled by the German government at the last minute. While Hitler had been encouraged to learn to speak English, he claimed to have been too busy, and so many Americans spoke German that Hitler's speech would have gotten across in America anyway. And the following year, in 1932, the Nazis mailed out 50,000 phonograph records of Hitler speaking, and they used the new loudspeakers to play the recorded speeches, and they were showing newsreels and movies of his speeches on street corners, projected onto the sides of buildings. The Nazis were spreading nasty rumors about opposing candidates, and so were the Jew communist newspapers, and one Vienna newspaper reported on Hitler's Jewish ancestry, but Germans didn't believe it. And when Hitler made a speech on the 28th of April in 1939, it was broadcast all over the world, and the 3 major networks in America covered it. Radio technology advanced further into the invention of the field radio used for the first time during Hitler's war, and that would be an important addition towards success on the battlefield. At the beginning of the Great War, the Germans had telegraph, while the Russians were delivering field orders on foot, a phenomenon described in stunning detail in Solzhenitsyn's book, August 1914, that was published in 1971. Technology gave a distinct advantage to one side over the other, and the first useful tool in warfare had been the wheel, although some believe the hammer came first. The first telegraph had been discovered by a group of monks in France, who stood in a huge circle holding some wire while someone threw a switch on a generator, and the monks reported that every one of them felt the shock at the same time. And the Italian Marconi and the German Karl Braun invented the wireless telegraph, and Marconi believed he'd been receiving messages from other planets. Samuel Morse was born in America, and he invented a flexible piston pump for fire engines in 1817, and then he ran for mayor of New York but only got a few votes. And Morse built an electrical toy in 1832, and he told Congress that it could send secret messages. Congress gave him some money to string wire in 1843 for the famous telegraph message, "What hath God wrought?" successfully sent from the U.S. Capitol in May of 1844, and the telegraph was initially used by the railroads because electricity could be shot through the rails instead of having to string wire. The transatlantic cable linked England with America in 1858, and within 2 months, fish ate the insulation. So a new transatlantic cable was laid by the Great Eastern in 1866, and by 1910, the new wireless telegraph allowed San Francisco to receive a message from a ship 4,000 miles away. The wireless had been around for only 15 years when it was put on board the Titanic, and the captain didn't know if his Marconi SOS had been received because the wireless was a new tool thought to be more of a toy for rich folks to amuse themselves. The Titanic left from Waterloo Station, and when newspapers first reported the Titanic disaster, it was difficult to believe, although many thought calling it unsinkable had been flying in the face of God. Some thought that perhaps God had given a warning that relying on technology and science was asking for trouble, an idea that would be resurrected when the telegraph made the 1929 stock market crash possible, as trades were being done at lightning speed. Samuel Morse had charged a quarter to let brokers see a demonstration of his telegraph, and in no time telegraph offices had sprung up all over Wall Street, so smaller stock exchanges were no longer needed in other cities because stocks could now be traded over the telegraph from New York City. Thomas Edison invented a ticker tape machine for Wall Street that improved the one they'd been using to print on paper tape. Thomas Edison invented a ticker tape machine for Wall Street that improved the one they had been using to print on paper tape since 1867, and the ticker tape had allowed people to stand outside the market to see the results of their trading, rather than having to make their way onto the floor. The Wall Street Journal was published by Mr. Jones and Mr. Dow in July of 1889, and they printed their new Dow Jones average in their newspaper that they were selling for 2 cents, and there had been a third partner in Dow and Jones named Charles Milford Bergstresser, but his name was too long, so they left it out. The Wall Street Journal had been started by Bergstresser in 1882 because he wanted to show the world the difference between facts and opinions, and during Hitler's war, the price of a newspaper would rise to 3 cents, but anyone purchasing the Wall Street Journal said that it was worth every penny. Thomas Edison's first invention had been a machine that could record votes in Congress, but it was rejected because Congress liked that voting took a long time, and they were more interested in the process than in the results. Edison had been born 3 years after the end of the war between the states, and he made a movie He made movie machines and record players and light bulbs, and Edison tried inventing something that would allow people to talk to the dead, and he also believed that Martians were listening to his radio. Edison spent a lot of time fighting with Tesla, so neither of them got the Nobel Prize. And Edison wanted direct current while Tesla used alternating current, and Tesla invented the rotating magnetic motor that eliminated the need to constantly replace contact brushes. Tesla had invented the radio, but Marconi was working for Edison at the time and got the credit for the wireless, and the telephone linked New York to San Francisco in January of 1915, and Eastman's box camera that had been invented in 1888 evolved into movie cameras. The first movies showed ignorant people being taken advantage of by people in the sophisticated cities, a theme that amused the city people and served as a fair warning to the country folks, and some people worried that these movies were teaching criminals how to commit crimes, so the U.S. Board of Censorship was born, and Edison did his part to censor films by hiring thugs to beat up people making movies he didn't like. Edison especially liked Birth of a Nation, while filmmakers who didn't agree with Edison decided to get out of town, which was why movie makers went to California. Movies helped to spread the notion that the communist proletariat was a romantic ideal of the common struggling man, and after the Great War these Jew communist movies were sweeping over Germany, films such as The Outcasts by Gerhard Lamprecht in 1925 that glorified the poor, telling a story about a man living in a homeless shelter after being released from prison, and he'd been put in prison for a worthy cause, and when set free, the man was given a small job that made him very happy, and he was quickly promoted when his worth was immediately recognized by his boss. Hitler would have seen this film, and the heralding of the common man was shared by both Nazis and communists, and much of the thrill of communism was in the backlash from the Great War, when people decided that the common man was not inferior to the nobility, as they had been led to believe, but he was able to endure outrageous suffering and was capable of incredible courage. Nobility was out, and commoners were in, and Hitler became the first common man elected to public office in Germany, thanks to the moving picture industry.